One of my twin daughters developed a fear of the dark around age 3, and within a week, her sister had the same fear too. This is the twin parent reality that their fears multiply faster than you can buy nightlights. Today on the show, we're talking about how to manage nighttime fears of your twins.
Welcome to the Dad's Guide to Twins podcast, the podcast that'll help you survive and thrive as a father of twins. Now, here's your host, the author of the book, The Dad's Guide to Twins, Joe Rawlinson.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dad's Guide to Twins podcast. This is Joe Rawlinson. I'm glad that you're with me today. As always, you can find me online at dadsguidetotwins.com, where you'll find tons of resources to help you along your twin parenting journey. And as a twin parent, you should dress like it. I got a special deal for you over at my merch store, twintshirtcompany.com, where you'll find tons of t-shirts designed specifically for us, parents of twins. We've got shirts for dads, moms, and the twins themselves. And I'm going to give you 15% off your first order if you use the code podcast at checkout. Once again, that's the code podcast at checkout over at twintshirtcompany.com. When your twins share a bedroom, developmental fears like monsters under the bed, scary shadows, or loud noises don't stay contained to one child. They bounce back and forth, they amplify, and suddenly you've got two terrified kids who won't sleep without every light in the house blazing. The good news, you can use the twin dynamic to your advantage here. The same bond that spreads fear can also build courage. When one of my girls would hear a strange noise at night, she'd immediately look to her sister for confirmation. Did you hear that? And suddenly a creaky floorboard became a validated threat because both of them had heard it. Twins provide social proof for each other. That's backed up by research that shows that children learn fear and responses through observation, particularly from their peers. Your twins are the ultimate peers, spending more waking hours together than anyone else. In our house, this played out in a predictable pattern. Twin A would see a shadow that looked kind of scary. Twin A would gasp and shows fear. Twin B immediately looks to where Twin A is looking. Twin B's imagination fills in the threat. And now both twins are convinced that something scary exists. This shared bedroom intensifies this because they are experiencing the same environment, the same darkness, the same sounds. There's no escaping the separate spaces to calm them down independently. Here's what surprised me, though, is that once we reframe the situation, the same twin dynamic that spread fear also spread bravery and courage. Your twins have a fearless companion right there in the room with them. When one of my daughters would get scared, I started to highlight how her sister was right there. Look, your sister is safe. She's okay. You're both okay together. We turned their shared space into a team headquarters rather than a scary place they had to endure alone. For example, we would let them problem solve together. When both girls complained about monsters, I asked them what would keep monsters away. They decided that a no monsters allowed sign that they decorated themselves and hung on the door would work just great. Did it objectively change anything? No, of course not. But they created the solution together, which gave them joint ownership of their safety. One twin also became the shadow expert who could explain what caused scary shadows, and the other became the sound detective who identified nighttime noises. This gave them kind of a job to do besides being scared. They can investigate together. And we had kind of a buddy check-in system. We established that before they would call us, call myself or my wife, they had to check with each other first. Is your sister scared? No? Then you're probably okay too. This worked about half the time. So let's talk about some of the common fears that your twins are going to have and how to address them. Number one is the fear of the dark. Now, this is a big one. According to the American Academy of Pediatrics, fear of the dark typically emerges between the ages of 2 and 4, and it is completely normal. So for our twins who were sharing a room together, we used a dim nightlight that they both agreed to leave on, and we established a consistent bedtime routine that included checking the room together before the lights went out. And we avoided making darkness the enemy because we need some darkness to actually get some sleep. We compromised with a small nightlight that cast a soft glow but didn't light up the entire room. The girls could see each other's beds, which was reassuring, but it wasn't bright enough to prevent them from sleeping. Another fear that they may have is fear of monsters or things under the bed. One of my daughters became convinced that something was living under her bed. Her sister was skeptical at first, but within a few days, she was worried about her own under-bed space too. So we tried something that we called monster spray, but we started using this before our kids could actually talk very well. And so it was called boobot spray, which I think they were trying to say robot spray, because sometimes they thought there was a robot in their closet. So it was basically just a water bottle, a spray water bottle with that we all called the boobot spray. And so we would check if there was anything in the closet, and if they were still afraid of the monster in the closet or the robot in the closet, we would spritz some water in there, and that would take care of that monster lickety-split. So the key was, taking their concerns seriously without reinforcing that the monsters are real. So we'd say something like, I know you feel worried about the monsters. Let's make sure the room is safe. Never saying things like, oh, there's no such thing as monsters. Don't be silly. Another fear that they may have is fear of loud noises. That could be thunderstorms, garbage trucks, the neighbor's dogs. It could be you or your partner walking around the house at night making noise. When you've got two kids reacting to every sound, nighttime can kind of feel like an anxiety festival. So we would identify and explain common nighttime sounds that the kids would hear. That's just the air conditioning starting. It would explain that, oh, that's just Dad doing the dishes in the dishwasher and in the sink. Sometimes we used white noise machines to mask sound changes. And white noise machines, they come in handy even when your kids are itty-bitty, when they're babies. And that same machine can be used for years to come. It creates a consistent sound barrier that prevents outside noises from kind of penetrating into the twins' nursery, the twins' bedroom. The advantage of twins is that sometimes one twin is actually braver than the other twin. That was our situation. One daughter was genuinely fearful, while her sister was skeptical of most nighttime worries. So the risk is that the braver twin becomes dismissive or mocking of her sibling, which kind of intensifies the fearful twin's anxiety. But you can kind of negate that by validating both perspectives. To the braver twin, you can say, your sister needs your help feeling safe. Can you be her backup? And to the more fearful twin, your sister's showing you that the room is safe. Can you watch to see how calm she stays? We never forced the braver twin to pretend to be scared or to mirror her sister's fear level. Instead, we positioned her as a resource and as a role model, as an example. This actually boosted her confidence while giving her sister a real-time, real-life example that she trusted. Most childhood fears are developmentally normal and will fade with time as your kids age. But if you're really concerned, and you should probably call your pediatrician if the fears that they have are so intense that they cannot sleep, and this goes on for weeks. One or more twins show signs of anxiety during the day that is related to nighttime fears, or their fears are escalating despite your consistent reassurance and strategies, like some of the ones we've talked about today, or if the fears turn into physical symptoms like stomach aches, headaches, bedwetting, or if one twin's fear is causing significant distress in the others. That's when you need to start. If any of those things happen, you should reach out to your medical professional. Our pediatrician reminded us that some anxiety is actually productive and protective for the child. It keeps the kids cautious, but when it starts to interfere with daily functioning or sleep, you may need some professional support. Here's what made twin fears harder for us than when my older boys had similar phases. We had to keep our approach consistent between both of the twins, even when their fear levels were different. So when we had our singleton boys, the fear phases kind of came at different times. But when we had our twin girls, same age, similar issues, similar timing. And so they would react differently. And so we had to react differently than we did with our singletons. If we gave one twin extra reassurance, but told the other twin to toughen up, we created inequality and resentment. Both twins needed the same level of respect and support, even if one seemed to need it less. So we practiced consistency with our girls. Same bedtime routine for both of them, even if one seemed scared. Equal monster checks, nightlight negotiations, comfort items, and we wouldn't compare them to each other, the bravery levels, like, why can't you be calm like your sister? And we would offer the same tools to both twins, letting them decide what would help them. Our nighttime routine eventually evolved to specifically address nighttime fears while keeping things efficient because, bedtime routines are already kind of crazy with all the things you have to do. So we would go through the steps, make sure they get their baths, they're in their pajamas. We would check the room together. We would make sure they had their stuffed animal or their blanket. We'd have some story time, quiet time. We'd adjust the lights, tell them how they're safe, they're going to sleep well, or mom and dad are close by. And then we would close the door or leave it cracked, based on what we had talked about. So the consistency of a nighttime routine really helps calm the children down because they have something comforting and reassuring every night, and that helps them overcome some of these fears. So we've talked about some things that do work in calming the fears of your twins, but some things that didn't work for us was separating our girls. We tried this briefly, thinking isolation may prevent the fear from spreading, but both girls were more anxious being alone. They actually found comfort being together in the same room. Logic, of course, doesn't work with really young kids either. Explaining the monsters aren't real doesn't really mean anything to them and their super active child imaginations. We had better luck with action-based solutions like, protective stuffed animals, or we talked about the water spray, the anti-monster spray. So most childhood fears peak between the ages of 3 and 6, and then they gradually diminish as kids develop better emotional regulation and understanding of what's real versus what's imagination. My girls are older now, and the monster phase is long gone, but we still see echoes of that twin dynamic. One twin gets nervous about something new, like trying a new activity or the first day of school, and her sister's reaction heavily influences her own courage level. So they still have that dynamic of feeding off of each other's reactions and emotions. But the skills they built managing nighttime fears helps them with other stuff in life too. Like they can check in with each other before they start to panic. They can use some calming strategies that they developed as a team. They understand that feelings are valid, even if they're not always rational. And they can support each other when they're in uncomfortable situations or having uncomfortable emotions. So every set of twins handles fears differently based on their personalities, how old they are, and specific triggers that they may be having. Some twins are both equally fearful, and others may have one brave and one anxious child. And some take turns being scared, depending on the situation. So how about your twins? Are your twins scared of the dark? Do they have trouble during the nighttime? Are they scared of the monster in the closet? Is one twin braver than the other? I'd love to hear about it. You can drop me an email, joe@dadsguidetotwins.com, or you can reach out to me on Instagram or X. I am at TwinDadJoe, and I would love to connect with you. And one thing you don't have to be afraid of is having something amazing to wear. That's why I started twintshirtcompany.com, where I have designed dozens of t-shirts specifically for you twin dads that you can wear out and about when you're with your family, or just to get a smile or a laugh from those around you. And you can get 15% off your first order over at twintshirtcompany.com by using the code podcast at checkout as a thanks for listening to the show. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.